What's up, good people? I hope everything is going well in your life, your personal life, and your work life with your families and your teams. Today I'm thinking about haters. And just the fact that as you start to do the real work, the hardest work in schools, and that work looks like dismantling white supremacy culture, naming implicit bias, redesigning schools for marginalized students, being explicit about your message. As you even start to hint at some of that work, beat around the bush, the haters come out. Sometimes they come out in full force. Sometimes they're in the shadows. I think we know some of this because for oppressed peoples and marginalized peoples, we know that any time that we bring up issues, the haters come out and the resistance and the defensiveness and the system claps back on us. So we know that part, but I think sometimes we think that if we use the perfect message or the perfect strategy or the perfect system, it's going to work. But the truth is, anytime we're doing this work, the resistance grows and the resistance comes strong, even if it looks like fake liberalism or colored blind mentality or whatever the code words people can use to disguise their racist beliefs. But the resistance and the haters and the doubters, they're there and they come out. So, what I really want to say about that, when this happens, it always kind of throws me back, because we always think we're making progress, we think that we got more people with us than we do, and we think that we've reached a new equilibrium, a new consciousness, but all of a sudden some stuff comes and it just slaps us in the face and catches us off guard and makes us feel like we're taking a couple steps back, because people who are benefiting from our racist system, our classist system, our sexist system, they don't want to lose their power. In the grand scheme of things, and or at least in the long term, but in the short run, they don't even want to look wrong. They don't even want to be reflective. Hence the response of defensiveness, right? Hence the misdirection. They don't even want to look wrong. Which is why in a small space in the real time, whether that's in a meeting, in a one-on-one conversation, there's so much defensiveness, pushback, questioning, devils, advocating. People don't want to look wrong, but ultimately they definitely don't want to do the hard work that comes with actually change. Because if we're wrong as the adults, then we got to change. It's not the kids' fault anymore. So instead of going through that process of looking wrong, being reflective, change, and growth, instead it's easier to hate. It's easier to doubt. And, my message, or at least the thoughts that I want to share, is that when you're trying to lead this kind of work, whether that is racial equity work or inclusive work, diversity work, cultural competence work, we must be prepared for the haters that are coming out. Because at a certain point, someone who pushed my thinking, or at least crystallized this for me, was Dr. Anthony Muhammad, who writes a lot about leadership. And I was reading this book a couple years back called Transforming Student Culture and Avoiding Staff Division, right, and bringing people together. And he talks about the traditionalists, right? I think of them as the conservatists, right? The good old boys, right? The folks who appreciate the status quo, right? Those folks are fearful. They're terrified of things changing, right? They're the same folks, let's be real, who are scared of our nation changing. Be that the demographics of the nation, the politics of the nation, the policies of the nation, right? Or the overall consciousness. They're the same folks, in my mind at least, right? And when we think about schools, those are the folks who say things need to be the way they were because that's how life is and that's how life should be, and that's what we need to prepare kids for. Who cares if the outcomes are always disproportionate and disparate and racist? That's just what it is. And if kids really want to do it, they pull themselves up by the bootstraps and work harder, whatever the fuck, all that same flawed thinking. Those folks are the haters in my mind. They're the folks that challenge you directly in meetings. They're the folks who throw out a devil's advocate question to take momentum out of the room, to take the air out of a room when we're making progress. If you're trying to lead racial equity work, and not even if you're trying to lead it, if you're trying to shift it, because if you're trying to shift it, you're leading it, period, because the resistance is strong. If you're trying to make those changes, we must be prepared for those folks to come after us in one way or another, right? They'll attack your identity. You didn't teach enough years. You haven't been at this school enough years. You are really only chasing personal accolades. You aren't strong enough. You don't have stance with the kids. Whatever they can use. The point of this is misdirection, right? You're just doing this because somebody else told you need to do it. You don't really believe in it. Racial equity, that's just a buzzword. Social justice, that's a buzzword, and that's going to shift, and we're not really going to be committed to this long term. Any type of misdirection, any type of excuse making, any type of attack even on you as a person. You're angry, you're loud, you're judgmental, you're self-righteous. Anything to take focus away from self and to actually prevent folks from looking at self and actually prevent an organization from looking at itself, its own policies. Ibram Kendi talks about racism being baked into the policies of America, or our government, our society. And I will say the same thing about schools, right? Racism is baked into our discipline policies, our grading policies, our curriculum design policies, our rules as a school is baked into that. So it's important that we still are able to look at those policies to make some changes happen. But when you're trying to lead that change, we must be prepared for those folks to come after you as a leader, you as an outspoken person, to try to peg you as a martyr, to peg you as someone who's really just on their own, so that it's hard to build solidarity and build support for what you're trying to do. Because people don't want that shit to change. Because they're benefiting from it, right? Let's be real, right? If I don't have to differentiate for students, I can teach how I was teaching. If I don't have to do community circles and community building, then I can just do what I was trained to do. I signed up to teach math, so I'm just going to teach math. That's what I signed up for. If the kids need more stuff, that's not what I signed up for. I don't got to do that extra work. Right? I don't got to look in the mirror. I don't have to de-escalate my actions in a situation. I don't have to be reflective of what bias I'm bringing to an interaction. So now, going back to Anthony Muhammad, he talks about, what do we do with the traditionalists, the conservative folks, the folks who are benefiting from the status quo. He talks about being extra explicit and consistent with both your vision and your mission, the plan you're following, not giving up on it, being clear, being even more clear on why we're doing it, so that, you know, you can control the narrative, because the doubters will try to establish a different narrative, right? Wherever there are questions, folks will fill it in with the narrative that fits their mental model. And unfortunately, a lot of times it's consistent with not just their identity, but their consciousness of their identity and the identity of the students that we serve. So, you know, I definitely recognize that I'm bouncing all around with different ideas because all this stuff intersects so much. But, you know, in short, we got to be prepared for the haters in this work, both preemptively and reactively, but also not to put all our energy in that, and to invest in, you know, Anthony Muhammad calls these folks the believers. You know, the Heath brothers talk about bright spots, very similar, right? The early adopters, folks talk about, at least in, you know, design thinking and change. We want to invest in those folks. We want to lift those folks up. We want to amplify their voices, learn from what they're doing, and really silence, right? Silence may seem like a strong word, but we don't really need to keep hearing people tell us that we don't need to change things for the benefit of marginalized students, right? If you're just talking to hear yourself talk, we don't have enough time to keep hearing people say that we don't need to do that. But we want those folks to realize that there are more voices that are talking about change and talking about progress, and leaders and disruptors, who I believe that we're all trying to be. At least, if you're rolling with me, we need more people in this fight. So that definitely gets down to being clear with what you're doing, more intentional about scaffolding for those folks on the fringe, right, on the cusp, who might be ready to be believing and be ready to do some of this stuff, but they just need some more support. You know, maybe even a couple of those doubters and haters might come around. It's going to be late. It may take a long time, and it may not even be within your same organization. They may find a different place before that consciousness is really raised, and that's okay. But we have to keep pushing and not let these haters and doubters set us back. Because the kids need us to fight for them. They need us to raise our collective consciousness. They need us to make our schools places of liberation and cultural affirmation and identity affirmation, and places of empowerment. And our kids need you, all of you. So good luck in that fight. Peace.